Hello, friends. My name is Elle, and this is David, and you are watching yet another deep dive from Grow Students Curriculum. In this one, we're going to be covering a series that is called Pass It On, which is our evangelism series for Volume 5. Super excited to show it to you, kind of give you a little inside scoop of what's going on. So, what we're going to do is give you like the big picture overview of this series, and then also get a little detailed on some of the specifics just to help you make this series extra awesome. So, David, tell us the plan for this deep dive.
Yes. So if you're a Grow user, this will be a perfect time for you to start planning and preparing. We'll talk a little bit about what to look for, kind of like what to prepare for. And so, yes, that'll be great for you. And then if you're not a Grow user, no worries. Feel free to spy in on our conversation, listen to some of the things we talk about. Who knows, something that we say could translate into your ministry as well. But essentially, how we're going to run this deep dive is that we're first going to do the overview. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the theme. Then we're going to talk about the structure of the series. And then finally, we'll give you guys some tips to kind of just watch out for as you teach the series.
So the series Pass It On was written by Tony Mosley and Nick Walburn. I'm super excited for you to see what they came up with. This whole series has a little bit of like a social media kind of vibe. You know, we're talking about passing on the good news. So we're going to kind of look at some of like the influencers of the early church, if you will. David, tell us more about what is happening in this series.
Yes. So week one, we are going to start talking about Tabitha. And she has a pretty wild story. If you don't know already, she was raised from the dead. And she was so inspired by this miraculous event, which who wouldn't be if you rose from the dead? And so she went on to go pass on the good news. She just wanted to tell everyone what happened to her life and just how Jesus transformed her life, literally. And so this first week, we're going to be talking about how our lives as students can pass on the good news to other people. So that's what we're talking about in week one.
Love it. Then in week 2, we're going to be looking at a story that is like kind of a weird one. It's where Peter has like this whole dream, and God convicts him of like not wanting to have dinner with other Christians because of like some of their religious practices. And so Peter totally changes his mind. It's great. That's wonderful. But so the idea here is that God had to kind of open Peter's eyes to making him more willing to pass on the good news to people who he maybe wasn't really prepared to share the gospel with. And so we're going to encourage teenagers to do that as well, with this big idea, which is you can pass on the good news to unexpected people.
Yes. And then in week three, we're going to hear from Lydia and how she shared the gospel with her family, and especially how Lois and Eunice passed down their faith to Timothy. And so in this series, or this week specifically, we're going to be talking about how students can also pass on the good news to their families as well. So just like how we listen in the scripture, our students can also learn how to pass it on to their families, because who knows what kind of family structure students have. Some of them may be Christians, some of them may not be Christians. Even extended family could be a little bit tricky as well too. So this is not just talking about immediate family, but all different kinds of family within their family. So the big idea for week 3 is that you can pass on the good news to your family.
And then we're going to wrap up the series by talking about Paul and Silas, specifically that like story that a lot of us probably know when they were in prison and then miraculously freed from prison. But what we're going to do with this week is we're not really focusing necessarily on like the big miraculous moment, although that is definitely an important part of it. We're also just talking about like how throughout this entire like day, this whole process of them getting thrown into prison and then escaping prison and then leading a jailer to Jesus. All of this happened because they were willing to be humble, and they weren't making their circumstances or their message all about them. They were actually making it all about Jesus. And so the big idea for this week is that you can pass on the good news with humility.
So yeah, we're super excited, and the fact that it pairs with stories also helps a lot with students. The fact that they can hear someone and hear a story and then see how they passed it on, and then kind of apply that to their lives as well, and see how they can also exemplify that. So one more time, here are the big ideas for this series. So it's our lives can pass on the good news. You can pass on the good news to unexpected people. You can pass on the good news to your family, and you can pass on the good news with humility.
All right, so let's talk about the theme for this series. Every series that we do, we like to put like a really fun, like tangible kind of theme around it, something that's visual, something that can like kind of be a metaphor that we carry throughout the series. It just helps teenagers kind of like take these abstract ideas and make them a little bit more concrete for them. So for this series in particular, we're using this theme of social media because that is usually the medium that teenagers are using to pass on some of their favorite things, their favorite TikToks, their funniest memes. They're using it all on social media. So that's what we're going to use for the series. David, tell us more about how this theme is going to like kind of transition into like a room design and all the other stuff that we have planned.
Yeah, so let me first talk about the room design. So room design, this is where we give you guys instructions on how to prepare your stage and your background just to kind of look like and match the series graphics. And so for this one, we are recommending to either get some foam or get some plywood boards and just either just plain and black or have a black fabric on them. And then you can either find like a print shop to print the series graphic and you can put that on your backdrop, or you can, if you're super artistic or if you got artistic students, you can stencil it onto your plywood board and be able to paint it or create it that way, whatever is best for your situation. Or you could just even put them on screens as well too. That's also an option, a very popular option that I've seen on our Facebook group, where students, youth pastors will just put the series graphic on the screens as well. But the really cool part about this series, and it kind of makes it just a little bit more to life in the social media esque, is find all the different graphics of social media, print them out, create them however you want to do it yourself, and you can hang them up actually from like your ceiling, or just find a different way to hang them up or prop them up, and just adds just a little extra pop to the connection of the theme with the social media and passing it on. So feel free to find like the TikTok and the Snapchat, YouTube, Reddit, Facebook, and then also add like the like buttons as well, and especially the share buttons, because that'll really make the connection of like, oh, we're talking social media, oh, we're talking evangelism, let me share the good news as well. So those are definitely key points to look at for when we're talking room design, and those will be in your instructions in the curriculum. So that'll be a great way to bring it to life.
Yes. And on top of that room design, we also tried to give you some ideas of how to weave this theme in through some other ways. So, David, what are some of those other ways that we recommend?
Yes. So we have two more ways. One is through games. So we give you some recommended games at the very beginning of our curriculum that you can play that connect to kind of like the messenger theme and passing it on theme. So you can do that before your teaching time. And then we also give you guys playlists as well. So we also do worship and then popular music playlists as well that connect to the evangelism theme. For the popular music, you can do them as like walk-in songs or walkout songs. And then for the worship stuff, you can also do that during your worship time with your youth band or on just YouTube or something like that. But all connects to the theme of evangelism, just to just bring it to life. And so it's not just the teaching that the students are hearing, but they're seeing it, they're hearing it, and they're experiencing it as well in all different avenues.
So next up, we want to talk about the structure of this series. If you've been using Grow Students, then you know that our typical lessons are split into three main chunks. That is the same all the time. So the first one is what, as in what are we talking about? It's kind of like the fun intro to the topic for the day. Then the so what section is the part where we're really unpacking scripture. And we're also talking about like why this scripture matters. Why should it matter to us? Why it matters to God. And then the final section is the now what section, which is where we talk application. And we'll kind of say, like, okay, so now that we've heard the story, we've learned something, what actually do we go and do about it? And so those are kind of like the things that always stay the same within Grow Students curriculum. But within that structure, we like to change things up so that every series feels different and feels fresh. And then every author for our different series can kind of bring their own creative spins to it. So, David, tell us what is like unique and interesting about the structure of this series in particular.
Yes. So the first thing I want to point out is this thing called the pass it on board. So, like we've said multiple times already, this series is on evangelism, but this will give students a hands on approach to what evangelism may look like in your specific context. So, essentially, the first week, you can kind of build out this board and give out handouts for students, and they'll be able to write all different kinds of ways that they can pass on the good news in their community, whether through just actions, whether just through sharing the good news with someone. So that's kind of sets up the first week where you do the handouts thing. And then as the weeks go on, you can actually build on it and have the board available for students and have these stacks of handouts available for students to write down more ideas. You could also do this in like a small group type of model where you do it within your small groups and the small groups get to do these together. And so like since this series covers 4 weeks, you could definitely do maybe like pick one thing every single week that is on the board that students want to do or want to focus on, and then do that each week, or even just after the series is done, pick out a few and you can do that. But essentially that will be showing up in every single week of the series. And so make sure to do that and put that together. And I think that'll be a great way to connect the teaching to application with the students as well. So that's one of the first things I want to talk about. And then the second thing that makes this unique is the activities. And yes, if you've been using Grow, you probably know that we have activities in the beginning parts of our series. But this one in weeks 2 through 4, so 3 out of the 4 weeks of this series, there'll be activities that connect specifically to each of the weeks. So I mentioned the games and how those are more kind of broader theme, but these activities in weeks 2 through 4 will be more specific to the actual big ideas for each of the weeks. And again, there'll still be like messenger kind of passing it on type of games and activities that'll connect very well. This will be super helpful for middle school students. Get some of the crazies out and the energies out for students, and then that way you can kind of go and transition into the teaching. But it's not completely random where you're just kind of doing a fun game, but it actually connects to the teaching as well. So another hands-on way for students to connect to the teaching rather than just listening and absorbing everything. So those are a couple of the ways that this series is unique.
Love it. So let's wrap up this deep dive with just a few helpful tips to help you make the series a little extra awesome.
All right, here's tip number one to make this series a little bit more extra special, just kind of a little helpful hint for you as well. So, tip number one is for middle schoolers, use influencers students would know. So, as you probably know, middle schoolers are definitely all over social media, definitely love going on TikTok and on YouTube, just kind of listening to different content providers and that sort of thing. So, do a little bit of research, maybe talk to some of your trusted middle school students and see which are the most popular influencers that your students are listening to. That way, you can actually use those examples, if they're appropriate, of course, in your teaching to talk about how they're kind of passing on good news or passing on stories or just anything about their lives, and just kind of use that as an example for these students because they'll already look up to these students and already respect these content creators. So that way, you can just kind of put that in there and still be relevant for your students, but yet still connecting it to the teaching. So that's tip number one.
Yeah, and that can get a little dicey for high schoolers, right? Like, because I feel like with high schoolers, if you try to be too cool and like too relevant, the high schoolers are like, you are so cringe right now. So it works great for your middle schoolers, but could be a little cringe for your high schoolers. But so here is a high schooler tip for you, friends. If you are doing a high school only ministry or high school only sermons, what we recommend here is maybe cut out the opening activities. Those are like those fun games that we talked about. Not that high schoolers don't want to play games, they probably do. But we think that this series is actually a really interesting one that could open up some really cool conversations and discussions at the end. So if you're kind of like a little pressed for time, you want to give them as much opportunity as possible to have conversations, we think that those opening games are an easy one to kind of just snip off so that you can have more time to talk.
Yes. And then tip number three is use the spring discipleship activity, the Pass It On Challenge. So, in a deep dive about a week from now, most likely, we'll be talking about this discipleship activity called the Pass It On Challenge. And so, this is actually meant to pair very well with this series. And so, you can actually do it concurrently. You can do it after the series. You can do it before the series. Kind of customize it to how it best fits your ministry. But definitely check that out. If you want more tips, just feel free to reach out to how we can use the Pass It On Challenge or just listen to the deep dive that's coming up in about a week.
Yes. And then our last tip for the series is if you would like to get aligned in your kids ministry and your adult small group ministry, because with Grow, we actually have curriculum for all three age groups. And once in a while, not every month, but once in a while, all three age groups actually align very nicely where they're talking about the same stories, the same ideas at the same time. So this series is actually one of those moments. If you are using Grow Kids, then the series that aligns with this one is called The Messengers from Volume 5. And if you are using our adult small group curriculum, Grow Groups, then the series that aligns with this is called The Ordinary. And you can find that in Volume 5 of Grow Groups. So check that out if you would like to. And friends, that's it. That is it for this deep dive. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. We're super excited to see what you do with this series. We are always just pumped to see like how you kind of take the ideas that we give you, but then maybe like level them up or remix them or change them up based on like what you know that you're good at and what your church has access to. So if you have like cool, fun takes on this series, please feel free to share them with us because we love to see it. It is a great joy. And also, always feel free to share your pictures, your videos, your stories, your wins, and your questions with us. You can tag us on Instagram at Stuff You Can Use, or you can post in our Facebook group, which you can find by searching for Stuff You Can Use, a youth ministry community. It's a really cool group of folks in that group. It's a big group, but we do have a lot of Grow users who are always down to talk about how they're prepping for their series. So feel free to jump in there and share. And friends, we'll see you next time. We do these every month. So see you for the next one. Bye.